This is Fred Beck from Fred Talks Fighting, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Willie Monroe Jr. Something really
Yeah,
going on.
everything's going good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm all good on my side, thank you. So, how's training going at Tampa City Boxing?
Everything's going good. I'm over there maybe 2 times a week. Obviously we're not training, very hard right now. There's nothing on the roster, but I love Tampa City. It's nice over there. It's a good
Yeah.
gym.
So, before we talk about your professional career, I want to go back in time a bit for your amateur career. Obviously, you grew up around your uncle, Willie Monroe. How much an impact do you think that had on you as a boxer?
Well, I didn't know my uncles. I didn't get to see my uncle a lot growing up. I probably saw him maybe once every 2 years. So the big influence was my grandfather, which was his older brother who taught him how to fight. But we did hear the stories of my great uncle, and I have gotten a chance to meet him and talk with him. And it was definitely I wouldn't. It's not about how influential, but it was definitely a pride thing. It made me more proud about where I came from.
So, you mentioned your grandpa there. Did he box himself?
Well, him and my uncles and all of them, all of the boys, they either fought or played baseball. Like those are the two sports. That their background is Afro-Cuban, so they either fought or played baseball. And my grandfather, his amateur career, after his amateur career, never turned pro because he had a prosthetic eye. Because my grandfather would fight in the streets a lot. So we got the story is someone threw a glass bottle at him in a street fight. He ducked the bottle, but the glass shattered, got into his eye, and trying to rub the glass out of his eye, cut his eye up past repair. Wasn't able to finish his career because he had to go on with a prosthetic eye, in which they turned him, his two other brothers, and my great grandfather turned their attention to Willie the Worm, who was their younger brother, who seemed to be the better fighter out of all of them anyway. And obviously he beat Hagler and, had a great professional career. So, but my grandfather sort of, recognized as the mastermind behind the boxing and, in the Monroe family.
For your amateur career, you won gold at the Empire Games and the New York Golden Gloves, which are really
Right.
good amateur achievements. What age were you when you realized, oh, I want to make a living out of this. I want to turn professional.
I kind of always knew that that's what I'd be doing, what I mean, because I loved it so much. But I would say the age that I really said, all right, I think I can do this had to be about maybe 16 or 17. Because I went to a national tournament. It's a big invitational national tournament. And I was the youngest guy in my weight class. I was only 16. And it was a 4-day tournament. And I knocked everybody out. Every day I won by a KO or a TKO. And all of the guys that I was fighting was 24, 25. You know what I mean? So at that point, I realized that I could beat grown men as a 16-year-old, that this is what I can do.
I mean, that's obvious there by your KOs. I mean, you had an amateur record of 128 wins, 14 losses with 72 KOs. And it's
Yeah.
amateur boxing. It's very hard to get the stoppage or even get the knockout.
Right.
Pretty impressive in itself. So,
Thank you.
looking back at your amateur career, what are some of the standout fights that you had? Because I believe you fought Sean Porter in the Olympic qualifiers
Mines.
of yours, yeah.
Um, Man, the National Golden Gloves, I love that. That was a big tournament in the Olympic qualifiers for the 2008 Olympic team. I lost to who's a good friend of mine, Sean Porter. That's no shame in that. He lost. I mean, he beat Alexander Usyk. I think is his name. His first name is yes, Alexander Usyk. So I mean, I lost to Sean Porter in an Olympic running. Uh, that's nothing to be ashamed of. But yeah, the National Junior Olympics I won. That was we went to Marquette. I've been to we were on the Scandinavian tour where we went to by this guy in New York named Tommy Coulter. We went to Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. We won that. We did a lot of big things in the amateurs. So a lot of those big moments and international moments were some of my favorite in the amateurs.
Sorry, when you turn professional, look
Right.
back at your career so far as a pro. What have been some of your favorite outstanding performances or some of your favorite fights?
I think some of my favorite fights will probably have to be my last one, the Centeno fight, the Gabriel Rosado fight, the Brandon Adams fight, all of Boxino. If you check, and go back and check out the Boxino tournament. That was probably a sweet spot in my career. That was a really, really, really good part of my career, a good part of my boxing career is the Boxino tournament. Probably the most memorable time in my career is the Boxino tournament.
So you mentioned the Gabriel Rosado fight. You beat Gabriel Rosado, who's a credible competitor. You beat him at 3 weeks' notice?
Yeah, we fought on about a 24-day notice. So I would say almost 3.5 weeks. We got the notice to fight him on a 24, on a 3.5 week notice. And we were already, pretty much in the swing of things. So, it was, the thing that was most gratifying about beating Gabe Rosado is that, when you look back on it, no one's ever beat him that way. Everybody that, you look at Kid Chocolate, you look at Danny Jacobs, you look at all of these different guys that have fought him, all of the other top guys that he's fought, he's given him a fight. It's been like a bloodbath, or it's been like I don't want to say a bloodbath, but it's been a real bloody fight. You know what I mean? He gets in there and he'll take a lot of punches. He's a fan favorite, and he makes these fights very close. We see what just happened with the Danny Jacobs fight with Gabriel Rosado. We see what happened in the Kid Chocolate fight, in a fight where two of the judges had Gabriel ahead on the cards when they stopped it on cuts. But when you look at the fight, when I fought Gabriel Rosado, he was just never in the fight. You know what I mean? He was never in the fight. I think the lowest scorecard was 8-4. I think two judges had me winning 10-2, and another judge had me winning 8-4. Like, it wasn't even close. So the thing that was so gratifying about that is I was able to take a guy that's people are used to seeing him make, expose fighters and make these great fighters look normal, or make them, or put them in a dog fight. And he couldn't hit me. He looked confused the whole night. Like, sometimes I go back at that fight and I laugh. I look at myself like, man, sometimes I can't believe I was doing some of the things I was doing with the great Gabe Rosado. So, I mean, that's a really gratifying fight.
And when you watch Gabriel Rosado's fights, it's always a bloodbath. What was your game plan going into that fight? And how did you keep him under control?
Well, the game plan with Gabriel Rosado is he's a little bigger than me, a little taller. And our game plan, because, I sat ringside when he fought Joshua Kaladi. And I was surprised that they actually took the fight, because he's just so much slower than me. And our game plan was a boxing move, set traps, boxing move. But if you watch the fight, the first 2 rounds, I'm like moving and boxing, and I'm just missing him by about that much. And I told myself I have to gauge myself. He's a little slower than I anticipated, so I have to slow down my pace in order to sort of meet him halfway and start making landing these punches. And if you watch, you'll see the whole fight. A lot of people are like, Willie Monroe thinks he's Floyd Mayweather, because I stood there in front of him like this, and I just walked him down like this, whereas people are so used to seeing me move. I more or less just stayed in front of him, so I wouldn't, because my movement with his lack of speed that I had already perceived caused a gap, and it caused a gap where I was falling that short of landing the punches. So I told myself I got to stop moving, because the fast movement that I'm giving against his slow timing isn't allowing either one of us to land anything. So I got to slow down a little bit and walk to him so I can close that gap. And to be able to execute that on a drop of a dime, and that was my second time fighting 12 rounds. Actually, my first time completing 12 rounds. So it was a lot of pressure on my head about how to handle that fight, but I was just proud of the way I handled it on a short notice like that and everything.
So in that fight, you were able to take him out of his rhythm, which Daniel Jacobs seemed not being able to do. What do you make of the Daniel Jacobs and Gabe Rosado fight, and who did you think won?
It was one of those close fights that honestly could have went either way. You know what I mean? I think with Danny, I think Danny probably should go back to the drawing board and really dig up his old self. We all know in this boxing thing, I don't know if this is the case, not to mention that, we're in the middle of a pandemic and everything, but, I think I don't count other fighters' money, but from what the reports put out, at least over the last maybe 4 or 5 fights, I think Danny Jacobs is clear close to 30 million just over his last 5 or 6 fights, all together. So, if that is true, sometimes when you have that much money, that much notoriety, he's been world champion twice. His name is a marquee name in boxing right now. Sometimes it's hard to crawl out of those silk sheets and really prepare for a guy like Gabe Rosado. And Gabe Rosado is a guy who's looking for that moment. He hasn't had his moment yet. And it was one of those nights where, and I alluded to this before the fight when a lot of people asked me, I said, I just pray that Danny is focused, because Gabe Rosado is one of those guys who can have a really good night on a champion's really off night. You get what I'm saying? Because he's always ready. He comes prepared to fight, and he hasn't had that big moment yet. So he still has that hunger and that drive to look for it. Whereas someone like Danny Jacobs, who was expected to take this guy out, in 2 or 3 rounds, he's had those big moments, and he's won those big moments, and he's had the world titles and the millions of dollars and the people screaming his name and knowing who he is and being that big guy. So sometimes when you're that high, it's hard to really go back to your old self of a fighter and prepare yourself for a rough guy that's coming up to that level. And if you don't meet in the middle, you could lose.
I think some of the reasons why his performance may have been a bit lackluster or not as good as usual, which he's an incredible fighter. Normally,
right.
Performances. Obviously, he's gone up to 168 pounds. He's usually been fought. Usually at 160. So he hasn't had to make there's like a bad weight cut, and he's also changed trainer, and then the pandemic.
Right.
Mentioning there about staying motivated, you've had lots of success in your boxing career. How do you stay motivated?
Kind of like Gabe Rosado, I haven't gotten the things that I come to get yet. That the boxing business and the politics of the business have been a little more hard on me than the average fighter. But it's allowed me to, it's made me become, it's allowed me to be accountable, and it's put me in a position to always have to be ready, for what's coming, rather than, let's just say this. When I fought Triple G, I found out 6 weeks before the fight. I was offered the fight. We fought May 16th. I think I found out the last couple of days of March is when the contract got signed. I think the last week of March we signed the contract. So I really had all of April and all of maybe 5 weeks up to May to train, because the fight was the second week of May. When you look at Danny Jacobs, he fought Triple G in March of 2017, and they signed the contract, and it was in writing before Christmas of 2016. So, he had 3 months to prepare, get a camp together, get this together, get that together, and to truly prepare. So the point that I'm making is, on the business and the political side, I haven't been given what most would call a fair shake. But in not giving a fair shake, the seed of equivocal benefit is I've learned to just stay ready. And I can be dangerous at any time for any fighter. Not to mention that I'm good and I'm southpaw.
You're an excellent southpaw as well, being a tricky southpaw. But you haven't fought in over a year and a half. Do you know when you'll be making a return to the squared circle?
We don't have a date slated. We don't have an opponent, but I'm hoping soon. Sooner than later. Obviously, each day that goes by is another day you're away from the ring and a little more rust settles in. But I think in due time. When you're older, I'm 33. I'll be 34 in a couple weeks. So I think, just like Floyd Mayweather, when he got older, the layoffs in between his fights became longer,
Yeah, and Floyd only fought twice a year from then on, really.
So, and he needed that rest in between. You need that.
And so you mentioned the Triple G fight there, and you've also fought for another great southpaw, Billy Joe Saunders.
Right.
I'll get your opinion on right now. Obviously, Triple G's a bit past his prime, but right now, if Triple G fought Billy Joe Saunders, who do you think the winner would be?
It would still be a toss-up, because Billy Joe Saunders is tricky. He's very skilled, but Triple G is still a bona fide puncher. And we haven't seen, Billy Joe Saunders fight anybody with that punching power. You know what I mean? We just who is he fought that everybody has said, now this guy is a bona fide puncher. You know what I mean? And all it takes, a lot of times is one shot, especially coming from a guy like Triple G. So to me, it's still a toss-up, and it still depends on what Billy Joe Saunders shows up. You know what I mean? And I think a focus and hi, baby. Daddy's on the Zoom now. You got to go over there with the nation. Jared's here. But I mean, if a full and complete Billy Joe Saunders comes in against, you know, Golovkin, who has a lot of wear and tear right now, you know, he could possibly win on points. You know, I mean, that's a probability. You know, I mean, it's not like he can't beat him, but the only thing I would say is we've seen Triple G in there against a bunch of different styles and fighters who are you know, deemed greater than Billy Joe Saunders. You know, the Danny Jacobs, you know what I mean? Tuba Canelo, you know what I mean? Even beat Deverenchenko, you know. So even though that was a split decision, you know, with that being Kell Brook, who's another really good fighter. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Billy Joe Saunders has no chance, but it depends on what Billy Joe Saunders shows up. And I think if there's any time that Billy Joe Saunders would want to beat a Triple G, he should try now. You know what I mean? Because it's either that or he won't get the shot, because who knows how long, you know, Triple G will be around.
Well, both fighters are under Eddie Hearn under the Matchroom Boxing banner, as well as Daniel Jacobs. As well, Billy Joe Saunders is at 168, so is Daniel Jacobs.
Right.
One more question, because I know you're a very busy man.
Oh, okay.
Only a couple of days ago that Floyd Mayweather will be coming out of retirement for an exhibition bout. Yeah, I want to get your opinion on that.
I mean, if it's true, I mean, hey, you know, boxing is forever evolving, and boxing isn't what it was yesterday, and it's not what it's going to be tomorrow. So we just enjoy the moment, you know what I mean? Because 20 years from now, we'll find, you know, boxing fans may find something else that's like, oh, this isn't real boxing. You know, 30 years ago, you wouldn't have saw something like this. You know what I mean? But it's all about how you look at it. You can look at it as evolution of the sport, or you can look at it as the death of the sport. You know what I mean? Whichever way you look at it, it'll be that way. But I hope it helps the sport. You know what I mean? I'm a old fashioned, you know, boxing purist. So I don't agree with guys, you know, using it who haven't really put in that level of work to come in and get that level of fight. However, if boxing is going to transcend, it needs something different. It can't be the same thing all the time. And boxing has changed. Boxing has changed since Ali, then to Sugar Ray Leonard, and then to Mike Tyson. Then you had your De La Hoyas and Roy Jones and Sugar Shane Mosley's. You know, you got your Floyd Mayweathers, and today you have your Canelos. Like, everything is different. You know what I mean? So, do I agree with it? No. Do I disagree with it? No. I'm just like, where will it go? Let's see where it goes. But it is hilarious to see a YouTube star fighting a guy, you know, like Floyd Mayweather, though.
And what do you think happens in that fight? Do you think Floyd dances around him all day, or do you think Logan has a puncher's chance?
Man, Floyd is what, 42?
Yeah, I think he's around 42 now, yeah.
Yeah, I just think at 42, I mean, and then if I'm not mistaken, Logan Paul is like 200 pounds, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's 200, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you're looking at a young cruiserweight, even though he may not have the skill and the natural ability of, you know, a Floyd Mayweather. You're looking at a 42-year-old, maybe junior middleweight. You know, it's like 4 weight classes in between these guys, you know. So I've been in the ring and sparred with, you know, heavyweights and cruiserweights who may have not been on my skill level, but they're just big, and no matter which way you cut it, it's dangerous. You know what I mean? A big punch coming from a guy that weighs up to almost 50 pounds more than you, yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah, Logan's 200 pounds, 6'2", and 25, and then Floyd's 150 pounds, 5'8", and 43 years old.
I mean, I think it was something like that Logan Paul fight, like, I don't know, like an Anthony Yard or something. You know what I mean? or I just think he's just too big. You know what I mean? It's just too big. Yeah. Person. And then didn't KSI or somebody beat Logan Paul?
Yeah, KSI beat him.
So why is Logan Paul still getting the opportunity to fight? Shouldn't that be KSI's fight?
Yeah, it probably should be. All the money that's being made from it, so it's crazy.
Well, they should have KSI versus Jake Paul.
Yeah, that fight will be made, but I think they want a crowd for that. They can maximize the money. Just smart.
Oh, okay. I mean, I would fight both of them, Doc. I would fight both of them on the same night. You know, if it were me, I would fight him and his brother on the same night. But I think Jake Paul and Logan Paul are both smart enough to not get in there with a guy, you know, like a me or a Danny Jacobs or like a Billy Joe Saunders, because it's just like it ain't gonna be for show. You know what I mean? Like we still coming to fight. It ain't gonna be for show. So I think they're smart enough at picking their niche as far as at finding their niche as far as picking the right opponent. You know what I mean? Because they're smart. They're not gonna get in there and call out a Canelo or try to fight a guy, a middleweight or a light heavyweight who can actually fight. Because then that'll really beat their ass. Excuse me. But you know, I mean, it's worth it against a Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? And you got a puncher's chance. You know, he's only so big. So I get it.
I mean, it's a lot of money to be made there. So thank you for your time, Willie. I really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy man. And where can the people find you on social media at?
You can find me everywhere at Willie Monroe Jr. Just hashtag brick by brick, baby. You know how that go. Hashtag brick by brick. You'll find me.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. God bless you. Thank you.